She walked into the interview room wearing worn flats and a second-hand blouse. No designer bag, no LinkedIn buzzwords, no Ivy League polish. They laughed before she spoke, dismissed her before they listened. But what they didn't know was that the woman they mocked wasn't just qualified. She was married to the CEO of the company they worshipped. And she hadn't come for pity. She'd come to quietly dismantle every arrogant assumption in the room. Hello family, welcome to True Life Stories. Please subscribe and leave a like for us, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The elevator doors whispered open on the 40th floor, exhaling a cold corporate breath. A subtle hush fell over the hallway as the woman stepped out, alone. The carpet beneath her shoes muffled each step, though the silence made her presence impossibly loud. She walked past a wall of backlit company slogans: disruption, innovation, power, toward a glass-walled conference room where 5 silhouettes waited in sleek suits and stiffer expectations. Her name was Nadia Walker, though no one in the room bothered to ask. She wore a faded pink blouse tucked into slacks just slightly too long at the heel. Her flats were scuffed, the sort of wear earned by miles of quiet endurance, not a lack of care. Loose but clean, bounced lightly as she walked. No designer purse swung at her side. No watch gleamed from her wrist. Just a plain manila folder pressed against her chest like a shield. The air shifted the moment she entered. From the corner, Diana Brooks, the HR director with a crimson blazer that screamed control, raised an arched brow. "She looks like she borrowed that outfit from a lost and found box," she muttered, not quietly enough. A flicker of amusement danced across the face of Greg Palmer, the senior executive lounging next to her. But it was Tyler Hensley, the youngest in the room, who delivered the next strike, sharp and swift. "We're interviewing candidates," he said with a smirk, "not collecting charity cases." Laughter flitted through the room like static electricity, uncomfortable but accepted. Nadia didn't flinch. She simply offered a quiet good morning and stepped forward, her grip tightening slightly around the folder. The panel gave her the kind of glance one offers an unexpected delivery, unsure what it is or why it's here. The chair at the far end of the long mahogany table creaked gently as she pulled it out and sat down. Outside, the view stretched endlessly, mountains etched into a blue horizon, clouds drifting over Silicon Valley's glittering sprawl. Inside, the atmosphere was colder than the glass walls that held them in. The table gleamed with polish, surrounded by glowing screens and silently judging eyes. A portrait of technological dominance and wealth, and Nadia, with her thrift store clothes and bare wrists, looked like a misprint in a luxury brochure. She placed the folder on the table in front of her, centered it precisely, and looked up. Not with defiance, but with something stronger. Certainty. The kind that doesn't need to shout. They didn't know her. Not yet. They saw a woman who didn't belong. But Nadia Walker had walked into rooms colder than this one before. She had heard worse than muttered jabs and hollow laughter. She had weathered storms not born of stock prices and market shifts, but of real life, of struggle, of sweat, of building things brick by quiet brick. And she was here not to impress them. She was here because she had already outgrown them. The silence in the room clung to the walls like dust, polite, professional, and suffocating. Nadia sat upright, back barely touching the chair, her hands resting lightly on the folder. The panel faced her like a tribunal of royalty cloaked in tailored wool and calculated disdain. Diana Brooks, still the sharpest voice in the room, leaned forward with predatory grace. Her scarlet blazer didn't wrinkle. Her manicured nails tapped twice on the glossy surface of the table before she reached out for the folder Nadia had placed so carefully. She didn't open it. Instead, she slid it with 2 fingers across to Greg Palmer, who barely glanced at it before pushing it back toward her like something distasteful. "She printed this?" he scoffed, lips curling. "On paper." "Minimalism," Diana quipped, lips thin and teeth white. "Or just minimal." A soft, reflexive chuckle rose from the panel. Nadia didn't blink. Greg twirled a pen between his fingers, a gleaming Mont Blanc that seemed more like a scepter than a writing tool. He tilted his head. You're applying for the senior systems strategy lead? Yes, Nadia replied, her voice even measured. That's the role listed. He leaned back. You're competing with applicants from MIT, Stanford. PhDs. Do you have, let me guess, a certificate in Microsoft Excel? Another ripple of polite laughter. Diana didn't even hide her smirk this time. Tyler Hensley, the 28-year-old golden boy, leaned in. His suit tailored too tight, his voice dripping with that born-into-wealth assurance. No offense, but it kind of feels like someone let a sociology major wander into the wrong building. Nadia smiled faintly, though not in amusement. Actually, it's computer science, with a specialization in AI ethics. Laura Chen raised an eyebrow behind sleek, rimless glasses. She hadn't spoken yet, but she observed sharply, like someone used to measuring intelligence without announcing it. Sociology, she repeated flatly. Nadia nodded. My minor. I studied systems through a human lens. It's not about what code does, it's about what it means. Greg made a dismissive sound in his throat. We're not here for philosophy. This is Stormp. We optimize logistics across 7 verticals. Real work. You have what? A few lines on your resume about a startup that doesn't exist anymore. I scaled that startup, Nadia said. We tripled revenue in under 2 years. My framework reduced resource waste by 37%. I've also contributed to 3 white papers on decentralized systems, one of which is still used in postgraduate coursework. Greg's chair creaked as he leaned forward. Tripled revenue? What? Were you selling lemonade on the side of a blockchain? Diana laughed. Nadia's expression didn't change. No. Predictive logistics for fleet routing, using an adaptive AI model I designed. Across the table, Laura finally spoke. Which startup? Itera. Laura paused. Itera was acquired last year by Quantex. Nadia nodded. Laura looked at Diana. That tech went for high 7 figures. She's not wrong. Greg leaned back, visibly irritated. Doesn't mean she can handle Stormp. We're not a sandbox. Nadia met his eyes calmly. I'm not here to play. The room stiffened. Only for a moment. Mark Evans, the operations lead, broke the tension with a grunt. He had the bored look of a man who'd been in this room too many times. Buzz cut, stocky build, callous fingers, more factory floor than finance. He gestured lazily at the folder, which now sat skewed on the table like a dismissed piece of evidence. Why don't you just tell us why you think you belong here? Greg smirked, arms folded like he was waiting for the punchline. Nadia took a breath. She didn't raise her voice. I've spent 8 years building systems people said were impossible. I've fixed code with less sleep than you'd give an intern. I know how to scale from nothing because I've lived inside of nothing. I'm not here because of where I studied or who I know. I'm here because I can see the gaps in Stormp before they even show up on your dashboards. And I'm here because I've already fixed them, in theory and in practice. For a second, just a second, no one spoke. Then Tyler laughed, a dry, awkward sound that bounced off the windows and shattered the moment. Stormp doesn't do pity hires, he said. This isn't a feel-good movie. Diana stood. Thank you, Miss Walker. We'll be in touch. The interview was over. Or so they thought. Nadia did not rise. The subtle shift in her posture was the only clue that she had no intention of leaving. Not yet. She reached forward slowly, retrieved the skewed folder, and opened it with a single, deliberate motion. The rustle of paper seemed louder than the hum of the wall-mounted screens, louder even than the undercurrent of condescension still thick in the room. I wasn't finished, she said calmly. Diana's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? I'd like to respond to the assumption that I'm here by mistake. Nadia's voice remained soft, but there was a steel thread now running through it. If I walked in wearing a Balenciaga blazer and a Tesla key fob, would we still be questioning my place? Greg made a sound in the back of his throat, a mix of amusement and warning. This isn't a TED Talk, Ms. Walker. No, Nadia said, looking directly at him. It's a boardroom, a place where decisions should be based on merit, not handbags. She pulled out the first page from her folder and slid it down the table. Laura Chin reached for it before anyone else. I mapped Stormp's core logistics architecture using your publicly available patent filings and product flow models, Nadia said. Then I built a new predictive engine on top of it using open-source tools. This diagram shows a reduction in back-end latency and infrastructure cost by 19%, without sacrificing security. There's a white paper behind that. I wrote it. Laura blinked, scanning the document with increasing interest. Mark leaned slightly forward in his chair. Greg waved a hand dismissively. Any coder with free time and a Reddit account could have cobbled that together. No, Laura said quietly, not looking up. They couldn't. The pause stretched long and awkward. Nadia continued, undeterred. Itera's codebase was modular, built to adapt in chaos. I applied that principle here. I didn't just write new code. I predicted where yours would fail under strain. Your current optimization system assumes static logistics zones. That breaks at scale. I solved for that. Diana, now standing stiffly with her arms crossed, tapped a manicured nail against her elbow. Why should we believe any of this? Because it works, Nadia replied. You can test the model right now. I built a working prototype. Tyler scoffed. So what? You reverse-engineered a billion-dollar system in your spare time. Yes, Nadia said simply. And then I made it better. He opened his mouth again but closed it slowly, the smirk faltering for the first time. Nadia's hands moved with precision as she laid out 2 more pages, charts, models, and key performance indicators. Laura leaned in, now clearly engaged. Mark uncrossed his arms. Even Greg's smug expression wavered as his eyes darted to the figures. This isn't a pitch, Nadia said. It's proof. I came here because I thought this company valued innovation. I stayed when it became clear you only value appearances. Diana's lips were tight, her arms folding like a gate slamming shut. None of this changes your resume. Nadia met her gaze. No, it changes your perception of it. Silence returned, this time unsettled. Something was shifting. Not loudly, but undeniably. She didn't need to raise her voice. Because brilliance doesn't scream. It shows up, calmly, in worn flats, with a folder full of answers no one thought to ask. No one spoke at first. The silence that had once hung over the room like smug superiority now felt brittle, a glass tension waiting to shatter. Nadia sat still at the end of the table, her papers spread like a quiet rebellion. She wasn't pushing. She wasn't pleading. She was simply presenting a reality that none of them were prepared to face. They had misjudged her. Badly. Laura Chen continued to flip through the pages. Her expression, once tight and unreadable, now showed signs of curiosity. Interest. Maybe even respect. Mark Evans gave a low grunt and leaned over to get a better look. Where did you say you ran this model? Nadia's eyes met his. On a sandboxed environment using a cloned subset of your old GitHub repository. The one your team forgot to make private. Greg sat up straighter, frown deepening. That's proprietary. No client data was used. Just architecture. It's all public domain now. Expired IP protection after your last audit. Nadia's gaze didn't waver. It's legal. Sloppy on your part, but legal. Greg's jaw clenched, his voice harder now. You think pointing out a weakness is a reason to hire you? No, she said calmly. But fixing it is. Laura placed the last page down. These diagrams, some of these bottlenecks have already shown up in our quarterly numbers. This is preemptive. That's what I do, Nadia replied. It was more than confidence. There was precision in her presence now, an edge that no longer fit into their earlier image of a desperate, underqualified nobody. Diana remained frozen, fingers tight on the back of her chair. This is all very clever, Ms. Walker. But clever isn't the same as credible. You've given us some charts and a good story. I've given you solutions, Nadia interrupted. Not sharply, but firmly. Storm prides itself on being forward-thinking. But you didn't even read my resume before you dismissed me. Diana's nostrils flared. Let me ask you something, Nadia continued, voice lower now, but no less steady. If I had walked in wearing Louboutin heels, quoting Elon Musk, and name-dropping Ivy League professors, would we be having a different conversation right now? Tyler's chair squeaked as he shifted. You're turning this into something it isn't. Am I? Nadia asked. Because this feels like more than skepticism. This feels like a performance. Yours. Greg narrowed his eyes. So what's your angle then? You came in here knowing you'd be underestimated. I came in here knowing I'd be tested, she said. I didn't expect the test to be whether I could tolerate being talked down to. Silence again. Only now the discomfort had shifted. It wasn't hers anymore. It belonged to them. Laura closed the folder with a soft click. Your framework. Is it scalable to international infrastructure? Nadia nodded. With minor language module integration, yes. I've accounted for adaptive latency controls and region-specific compliance filters. Mark whistled low under his breath. For the first time, Nadia allowed herself to exhale. Not in relief, but in clarity. The tide was turning. Not in applause or awe, but in hesitation. In doubt. They weren't laughing anymore. They were listening. The door opened with a soft click. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't slam or creak or draw attention with any thunder. But somehow, in that precise moment, the shift in the air was unmistakable. Like a change in barometric pressure before a storm. All heads turned. The man who stepped inside didn't knock. He didn't announce himself. He didn't need to. He was tall, with a silver-threaded beard, sleeves rolled to the elbows of a perfectly tailored dress shirt. No tie. No badge. No introduction. But his presence carried weight. Authority hummed in the space between his silence and their attention. Diana straightened so quickly her chair rattled. Mr. Walker, sir, I. Nadia didn't turn to look. She was already smiling. Her husband had arrived. Andre Walker, founder and CEO of Stormp, regarded the room for a long, quiet moment. His gaze was unreadable, cool, clinical, but not unkind. Just observant. It moved from Greg's too-tight jaw to Diana's flushed cheeks, to Tyler's frozen, almost confused face. Then to Nadia, seated with grace, her papers still spread like a battlefield that she had already won. I was told there was a final stage leadership interview happening here this morning, Andre said mildly. Diana's voice caught slightly. Yes, it's in progress, though we were just wrapping up. Doesn't look finished to me, Andre said. Then calmly. Mind if I sit in? Greg rose halfway, gesturing nervously. Of course, sir. Please take my seat. Andre walked past him without looking, choosing instead the empty chair beside Nadia. She didn't reach for him. He didn't offer her a reassuring pat or theatrical nod. Just a shared glance, so brief it barely flickered, and a shared understanding. Laura's eyes flicked between them. It was Tyler who broke the silence. You're married? He said, incredulous. To her. Nadia looked at him. Is that a problem? Tyler opened his mouth again, then shut it slowly, unsure where to land. Greg stepped in, stiffly professional. Sir, if we had known, if this candidate had disclosed. She didn't need to disclose anything, Andre said, his voice soft but final. She's earned every qualification in that folder without using my name once. He looked at Diana. You read her resume, right? Diana's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Her work with Atera? The proprietary routing framework? The AI logistics engine that quietly shaved millions off global shipping inefficiencies in under 2 years. His voice wasn't loud, but it pressed on their chests like gravity. You saw all of that? Silence. Laura glanced down. Greg looked away. Tyler was visibly sweating. Mark let out a single, quiet chuckle, like he'd just realized what play they'd fumbled and how badly. She reverse-engineered your own system, Andre continued, and offered you a better one. In this room, without a whiteboard or a laptop. From memory. Still no answer. I built this company from the ground up, Andre said, his voice now cutting with precision. But she's the reason I didn't burn out doing it. For every sleepless night I spent managing investors and launch deadlines, she was next to me, debugging until sunrise. Half of Stormp's early architecture is based on the logic trees we sketched on pizza boxes in our apartment. He turned to Nadia now, and for the first time, there was warmth in his tone. I told myself I wouldn't get involved, that I'd let you go through the process like everyone else. Nadia smiled faintly. I appreciate the effort. But I couldn't stay out there, he admitted, after I saw the interview feed. The room collectively stilled. Feed, Diana echoed. There's a reason every interview room has security footage, Andre replied. Sometimes we review high-level hires. I watched for 5 minutes and decided that was long enough. Diana's face paled. Tyler looked like he might actually be sick. Andre stood. I'm not going to tell you what to do next, he said. But I am going to ask you all a question. And I want you to sit with it. How many other Nadia Walkers have walked into this room and never made it past your first laugh? He didn't wait for an answer. He didn't need one. They were still sitting in silence when Andre left the room. The door shut with the same quiet grace it had opened, but now it echoed. The conference room, once a citadel of certainty and control, had shifted. The table no longer felt like a throne to the interview panel. It felt like a witness stand. Nadia hadn't moved. She sat where she'd always been, except now the air around her felt heavier. Not because of discomfort, but because of presence. The woman they had ridiculed now loomed larger than all of them. Laura Chen cleared her throat first. She was the only one who looked directly at Nadia. You contributed to Stormp's back-end design, she said, her voice softer now. Why didn't we know? Nadia gave a small shrug. I never asked to be known. I asked to be useful. Mark grunted, almost in agreement, and leaned back with an amused look on his face. That might be the most honest answer I've heard in this building. Greg, however, was still struggling. His posture remained rigid, like he was trying to convince himself he hadn't just witnessed a corporate fumble on a legendary scale. You could have just told us who you were, he muttered, almost accusingly. And what would that have changed? Nadia asked. Would you have listened then? Or just pretended to? Greg said nothing. Nadia's eyes turned to Diana next. The HR director stood like a statue, face unreadable but tinged with something beneath. Fear, or perhaps worse, recognition. You're supposed to be the first gate, Nadia said, voice quiet. Not the first wall. Diana's lips pressed tightly together. Her veneer of authority had cracked, and she knew it. Do you want my advice? Nadia continued. When a candidate walks in with a different look, a different tone, a different resume, don't lower your expectations. Widen them. No one interrupted. I've watched this company grow from a 2-man apartment experiment into a global tech force. I've lived it. I've shaped it. And I've stayed out of the spotlight because I never wanted my proximity to Andre to be a shortcut. She leaned back in her chair, folding her hands neatly on her lap. Her voice had steadied again. Strong, not defensive. Measured, not bitter. But let me be clear, what I offered here today. That wasn't a shortcut. That was capability. And you almost laughed it out the door. Tyler looked up at her then, eyes wide, mouth slightly parted. The arrogance that had once radiated from him was gone. He looked for the first time like a young man who had never actually been told no in his life, and was now seeing what earned respect really looked like. He swallowed hard. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Nadia looked at him, surprised but not moved. Don't apologize to me, she said. Apologize to the women and men who came before me, who walked in here dressed wrong, or spoke too softly, or didn't go to the right school. The ones you never even heard because you were too busy laughing. Diana finally spoke. Her voice was thin. If you accept the position, what would you want your title to be? Nadia smiled. It wasn't smug, it was clear. Same one I came in here asking for, she said. Senior Systems Strategy Lead. She paused, then added, but I'll also be overseeing recruitment reform, starting with this panel. Laura nodded once. Mark chuckled. Greg looked like he'd swallowed something sour. And Diana? Diana finally sat down. Nadia stood. This time, no one stopped her. She didn't need to be validated. She had just rewritten the rules. Nadia didn't rush. She gathered her folders slowly, deliberately, as if to underline that no one in the room would ever see it the same way again. She didn't slam it shut. She didn't strut or linger or gloat. She didn't need to. The damage wasn't loud, it was precise, like a scalpel to ego. And now came the part they never saw coming. "I have no interest in revenge," she said, slipping the folder under her arm. "That's easy, predictable, and frankly not very efficient." Greg blinked, confused by her calm. "But I do believe in accountability," Nadia continued, stepping back from the table. "Because a company that grows without it collapses under its own weight. I've seen it. Andre's seen it. You will too if this culture doesn't change." Her eyes locked on Diana. "I'm not here to take your job," she said. "But someone will if you don't start doing it better." Diana looked like she wanted to speak, but there were no words that would carry any weight now. Not after the footage. Not after the humiliation. Not after the reminder that the woman she'd tried to belittle had helped build the very system she was gatekeeping. Nadia moved on. She stopped beside Tyler. He stared at the table, his knuckles pale against the wood. "You're smart," Nadia said gently, "but you've never been forced to listen. Do that. You might actually learn something." He looked up at her, jaw tight. He nodded, small but sincere. Then came Greg. He straightened defensively as she approached, still clinging to the corporate armor that had served him for so long. The sarcasm, the dismissiveness, the belief that control was earned by volume, not value. "Greg," Nadia said, almost like a teacher correcting a student. "You know the systems, but you rely too much on fear. And you underestimate quiet people." He opened his mouth, then closed it. "You're lucky I'm not vengeful," she added. "Because in a different version of this story, you'd be walking out with a box right now." She didn't wait for a response. Her final words were for the room. "I'm not here to show you who I am anymore. That part's done. What matters now is what you do next." She stepped toward the glass doors. And whether or not the next woman who walks through that door wearing flats gets heard before she's judged. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was loaded. It held regret, reflection, shame, and something else Nadia didn't stop to name. Maybe respect, maybe fear. Maybe both. The elevator doors opened, and she stepped inside. As they closed, Nadia didn't look back. Stormp's lobby gleamed as Nadia stepped onto the marble floor, her flats tapping gently with each step. The cavernous space, with its towering LED walls and pulsing minimalist soundtrack, felt less like a corporate palace now and more like something she had already outgrown. The elevator ride down hadn't felt like a descent. It felt like arrival. Outside, the morning sun poured through the glass facade, illuminating the manicured courtyard where executives often pretended to take important calls. Nadia paused for a breath. Not because she was exhausted, but because peace, when earned, always comes quietly. A familiar voice joined her. "You made a bigger impact than I ever could have with an announcement," Andre said, stepping beside her. His voice held a softness it never showed in boardrooms. "I saw Diana's face as the elevator closed. That room won't forget what happened today." Nadia smiled. "They'll remember because it bruised their pride, not because it opened their minds." Andre shook his head. "You don't know that." "I do," she said. "But bruises can become scars. And scars remember lessons." They walked together in silence for a few moments, passing the reflection pool, where Stormp's mission statement scrolled across the water in digital ripples. Power through precision. Progress through vision. Nadia stopped. "I'm taking the role." Andre arched a brow. "You don't have to. You've already proven your point." "I'm not doing it for that," she replied. "I'm doing it for the next Nadia who walks through those doors. She shouldn't have to fight for the floor just to be heard." A quiet beat passed between them. "Also," she added, "I'm restructuring recruitment, rewriting the candidate rubric, and removing the panel-based bias model you installed in 2021. It favors sameness." He chuckled. "Should I be worried?" She looked at him sideways. "You should be proud." As they reached the parking level, Andre turned to her. "You know you're going to scare them." "I hope so," she said. Fear can be useful if it clears the way for fairness. That evening, her name appeared in an internal memo sent across every department. New appointment, Nadia Walker, Senior Systems Strategy Lead. With a decade of experience in predictive logistics, systems design, and ethical AI, Nadia will lead initiatives aimed at future-proofing Storm's infrastructure. She will also co-chair our equity and hiring task force, effective immediately. No fanfare. No headline. Just a line in a memo. And a message beneath it louder than any applause. She's not the exception. She's the standard we've been ignoring. We have come to the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.